What's up, everyone? Welcome to the June 20th edition of DraftKings Tournament Plays presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, use the code AWESEMO when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. You'll receive one free month of Stokastic plus Platinum. You'll also receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100 on your first deposit. We have a pretty difficult MLB slate tonight. There's a lot of good pitching going. A lot of good offenses going, but the good offenses are typically facing the good pitchers. A lot of the bad pitchers are facing the weaker offenses. So it makes for a pretty interesting slate where ownership, I think, is going to play a big role. Like it always plays a big role, but maybe a little bit more so today. You're going to be able to attack some spots where the field is projected to not really be going to pitchers and not really be going to the opposing offenses either, despite both of them having high ceilings. As usual, we're going to take a look at three of the top tournament stacks and three of the top tournament pitchers using the top stacks tool and the top pitchers tool on the Stokastic.com website. Starting with the top three stacks. Number three, the Atlanta Braves are projected for 2% ownership with a 6% chance of being the top scoring stack and a 1% chance of being the top value stack. The Braves have a difficult matchup against Logan Webb, though you do have Webb pitching in Atlanta, so getting out of the favorable confines of San Francisco. Atlanta also has a very right-handed heavy lineup, which is not ideal against Webb, as he's good against both sides of the plate, but even very, very good at limiting power to right-handed hitters. A sub 100 expected ISO to righties so far this season. But Atlanta does have the highest ISO on their active roster in Major League Baseball at 209. Their 117 WRC plus is the fourth highest in the league. And as I mentioned, they're just not getting much ownership here. So it is a strong spot to target in tournaments. Number two, the Detroit Tigers, 8% projected ownership, 6% chance of being top scoring stack, 25% chance of being the top value stack. They're taking on Josh Winkowski and the Boston Red Sox. Detroit's active roster is by far the worst in baseball with a 75 WRC plus. They did get a reinforcement calling up Riley Green, one of the top hitting prospects in baseball. He is $2,100 on DraftKings, projected to bat fifth. Outfield eligibility certainly makes him a strong value, but Winkowski is also just one of the bigger question marks on the slate in terms of pitching. He has struck out 23.5% of left-handed hitters so far this year, 14.3% of righties, but he's only thrown 141 pitches in the major leagues. Overall, an 18.4% strikeout percentage, 3.97 xFIP. But on a slate where you do have a lot of very good pitchers going, this is one of the pitchers where at least you don't really know if he's good at the major league level yet. Most projection systems don't expect him to be that good at the major league level at this point. So it is interesting to target him, especially because the Tigers are so cheap, but also not getting that much ownership. It would be very different if the Tigers were getting a lot of ownership because of how cheap they are, given that they are the worst offense in baseball so far this season. But at 8% aggregate ownership with a 25% chance of being the top stack and a lot of individual value throughout the lineup, it does make the Tigers look pretty appealing against Winkowski. And number one, the Toronto Blue Jays taking on Lancelin and the Chicago White Sox tonight in Chicago. It is supposed to be pretty warm in Chicago, and Lynn is making his second start of the season. We know that Lynn has a long track record of being a good pitcher, particularly against right-handed hitters, which is problematic for the Blue Jays since they have a very right-handed heavy lineup. But at the same time, they're only projected for 7% aggregate ownership, about a 13% chance of being the top stack. Right now, we have them with higher top stack odds than both the Boston Red Sox against Alex Faedo and the Los Angeles Angels against Chris Bubich. I think it's likely that we see that come back down and the Red Sox and Angels move ahead of Toronto in pure top stack percentage. But those teams are both getting more ownership as well. They offer more value. They're in more obviously good spots. So even if the top stack percentage on Toronto does come down a bit, I still expect them to be the third most popular team out of the top three teams on the slate in Boston, the Angels, and Toronto. So I do like getting to them against Lynn. Like I said, 7% projected ownership, 13% chance of being the top scoring stack right now. Now looking at the top three tournament pitchers, number three, Logan Webb taking on the Atlanta Braves. I mentioned the matchup from the Braves side. I also like it from Webb's side. He's only projected for 9% ownership, 14% chance of being a top two pitcher, 11% chance of being a top two value pitcher. He's only $8,400. And while Atlanta does have a lot of power in their lineup, there's also a lot of strikeouts here. Their active roster has a 26.1% strikeout percentage, which is the highest in baseball. And they do have a predominantly right-handed lineup. Webb so far this year has struck out 22.8% of righties compared to only 19.1% of lefties. He has allowed a 178 expected ISO to lefties, just below 100 to righties. So he's done a much better job of limiting power to righties as well. and he's not getting much ownership here. So Webb, it's a high upside spot for him. It's a high upside spot for the Braves. I like getting to both of them in tournaments. Number two, the opposite side of that game. Max Fried is $9,500, taking on the San Francisco Giants. Not a particularly appealing matchup. The Giants' active roster has a 21.2% strikeout percentage, 114 WRC plus. Fried is projected for 19% ownership with a 20% chance of being a top 2 pitcher and a 9% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. Fried so far this season has a 23.1% strikeout percentage, which is the 4th best on the slate, and an excellent 2.93 xFIP. And number one, Shane Mcclanahan, 28% projected ownership, 27% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 9% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. He has a brutal matchup tonight against the New York Yankees. The Yankees lead the league with a 124 WRC plus. They have one of the most powerful offenses in the league with a 199 ISO, which is second to the Atlanta Braves. But the reason that Mcclanahan still is appealing in tournaments, even at relatively high ownership, is that there's basically 3 pitchers on this slate that stand out above everybody else in terms of talent, and that's Mcclanahan, Corbin Burnes, and Garrett Cole. Burnes is facing the St. Louis Cardinals, so a difficult matchup there. The second best offense in the league, only an 18.9% strikeout percentage. And Cole is facing the Tampa Bay Rays, 100 WRC plus, 23% strikeout percentage for Tampa. Clearly the most appealing matchup of the 3, but still not a cakewalk. And Cole is also going to pick up a lot of ownership. So it is a spot where getting to Mcclanahan at the lowest ownership of the 3, right now, Cole at 40%, Burnes at 40%, Mcclanahan at 28%, is pretty appealing given that you're just getting that ownership discount. And all 3 guys are in relatively difficult matchups, Burnes especially. So Mcclanahan, of those 3, does stand out. So to recap, the top 3 tournament stacks on tonight's slate: number 3, the Atlanta Braves; number 2, the Detroit Tigers; number 1, the Toronto Blue Jays. And the top 3 tournament pitchers: number 3, Logan Webb; number 2, Max Fried; and number 1, Shane Mcclanahan.